All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started because it is noon and I want to respect everyone's lunch hour. But thank you all so much for joining us for today's Titan Talk, Firing Yourself, When to Leave Your W-2 with Kory Dieter, class of 2006. I am so excited to have Kory as this month's speaker. This topic is one that I think we all consider and wish to be more knowledgeable and confident about. And I hope today you learned some strategies and lessons that will serve you well in your future. Just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. You are viewing today's talk as an audience member. Therefore, you do not have the ability to turn on your video or your microphone. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And there will be dedicated time at the end of the presentation to answer your questions. If you have a technical issue, you can reach out to the Office of Alumni Engagement at 309-556-3145 or by email at iwualum@iwu.edu. Again, that's iwualum@iwu.edu. A recording of today's webinar is going to be available to view on the Office of Alumni Engagement YouTube page, and you will be sent a link and a short survey tomorrow afternoon, so you can view those directly. A 2006 graduate of Illinois Wesleyan University, Kory Dieter always did what was expected of her. She supported herself through undergraduate studies, got a stable job upon graduation, received her MBA at the Ohio State University, and secured a coveted healthcare consulting role at the Big Four firm. But learn how a family health crisis and a terrible boss forced Kory to question everything and pursue her financial independence and early retirement through real estate investing. She's going to share with you today some strategies that advanced her career and real estate portfolio, some painful lessons learned along the way that helped force her to pivot, and the final straw that gave her the confidence to leave her W-2 position for good. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Kory, for being our speaker. And at this time, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Super excited to be here. And as you were like reading that description back, I was thinking, oh my gosh, like I sound like such a rebel, but I'm actually usually pretty by the book. But I'm sure as many of you have experienced, like we've all had like the terrible job, the terrible boss, showing up and realizing this wasn't what I expected it to be. And so, I've definitely quit bad positions and moved on to new positions, but like what I'm really excited to talk about is just leaving the job and leaving the workforce for good, and when it might make sense to do that and how you can set yourself up to do that really well. And so would love it if you guys can put in the chat, where you're at in your career, whether you're early stage, mid stage, retired, just so I can kind of get a sense of the audience. I don't know if the chat functionality is available for people to do that, but if not, I'll make some assumptions that it's a broad audience at all stages. So let me see if I can move on. Okay, so hey, this is me. I don't have that much Illinois Wesleyan gear, but at the time when I was in school, I definitely had a lot. So just a little bit more about me. I think you know a little bit so far based on what Kaylee shared, but I was born in the Midwest, or born in California, but raised in the Midwest, daughter of an immigrant. We were poor. I was the first in my family to go to college and finish college. And because of all of these things that I thought were things that held me back, I was just so longing to fit in and made a lot of life choices that would ultimately land me a salary job. I remember when I was little and people used to ask me when I was 7 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because my parents had never been able to really keep jobs, or, they were working on commission. I just said, I don't care what I want to be as long as I get a salary. And so that's kind of where I was coming in from. And my goal by the time I graduated was I want a cookie cutter suburban house where the house isn't falling apart. I want to drive like a newer, cute car, and it'd be really nice to not have to like beeline to the clearance section every time we go shopping. And so I don't share this to really like make you feel bad for me. I mean, I'm doing fine now. I just think we each have our own challenges and our struggles and strengths too. So there's certain things that are going to come easier to others and things that, are a little bit more difficult. And so I think part of my journey was just trying to figure out what are the strengths that I can really lean into, and encourage you to do the same. When I was at Illinois Wesleyan, I think there are three gifts that really come to mind in terms of my experience there. I think one was the gift of financial aid. So since I was paying for school on my own, financial aid just made it possible for me to graduate and have this experience outside of my little bubble and meet people from everywhere. And I studied abroad twice. So I did a study abroad semester in Australia, and then I also did a study abroad May term. And so those two experiences really taught me the world is huge, and there's so much outside of the Midwest, and even outside of the US, that the world is just there's just so much to learn, so much to taste, so much to experience. And so that really sparked my interest in traveling. And then I think the third thing was just the gift of career potential. So while I thought, when I graduated with a business degree, I thought being a businesswoman was going to look something like this. I'm sure a lot of you can relate. You have these high hopes when you're in college about what kind of changes you're going to make in the world, and what you're going to wear and who you're going to be. And what I quickly found out was it actually felt something like this. Can you guys just put like a yes in the chat if this is something that you might have experienced yourself? But yeah, my first job out of college was a small office, family owned. There were 8 people in the office. Every Monday when people ask, what'd you do this weekend? It was the same thing. And I thought I was going crazy. But I think that gave me the hunger to really just look for what else is there to do. And so I ended up getting my MBA shortly after that, got a great career in healthcare consulting, which was awesome because I love to travel. And so I was on the road Monday through Thursday every single week. I got to work with different teams, different projects, different clients, and work in different cities. And so that really filled my travel, like my hunger for travel, as well as my hunger for variety. And it also gave me a lot of travel perks. So that allowed for me to travel personally as well. And then of course, getting some practical skills that, just helped me throughout my career. But we're not here to talk about the career. We're here to talk about quitting, right? So while I am sure there are people in here that have loved their job every single day, I imagine many of you, like myself, have made career advances, gotten the promotion that you worked so hard for. And then once you achieve it, you look around and you're like, gosh, is this it? Or like, oh my gosh, this is like 3 times more work for like a 5% increase, right? And it's just like the math isn't mathing. And so, yeah, I had this moment so many times where you think that there's this idea of achievement and like what you're supposed to strive towards. And then once you get there, it's like, it's not as good as I thought it was going to be. And so, yeah, I imagine I'm not the only one that has felt that way. So let's talk about quitting. And the 3 lessons that I learned that ultimately got me to get to the position where I could leave my day job. So I'm looking at the chat. So I hear this all the time from young people. Yeah, I've worked many different jobs and never really enjoyed any of them enough to want to stay there for the rest of my life. Yeah, I mean, I think we all go through this, and luckily, and especially because of COVID, people have kind of woken up to the fact that we do have choices. We can choose whether we want to go into many of us can choose whether we want to go into an office, or if we want to work for a company. Our job market has expanded from where we live to really anywhere in the country or world. So the first lesson that I learned, and this was a really hard lesson for me, was to turn these breaking points into breakthroughs. And so I'm a person that doesn't want to quit usually. And I'm also a person that tries to make things work, and I internalize a lot until I get to the point where my back is up against a wall. And then all of a sudden it's just like, I've had it. And so there's a couple times in my life that were truly breaking points for me. One of them was me and my youngest brother, Michael. He had struggled with his health his entire life. And he was in and out of hospitals, surgery after surgery, getting poked and prodded. And, there were even points where, because he would go to teaching schools, where I would see the glee on med students because they're like, oh, he's such an interesting case. And it's like, this is not an interesting case. This is a human being. And, you know, while he enjoyed his life to the fullest, his life to the fullest was not what I was doing with my life. You know, I was able to walk and to run and to do a jumping jack and to speak. And so I was thinking, gosh, like I have so many physical abilities and I'm spending my time in front of a desk every single day. And is this the best version of my life? Am I using my physical abilities, you know, at their fullest potential? And so witnessing him you know, eventually ultimately pass away, it was just such a constant reminder. And especially when he was transferring into hospice, this is one of these jobs where it's just completely unfulfilling. My boss, you know, not a bad person, but just it just wasn't the right fit. She wanted somebody that had a certain skill set. She hired me, and it just wasn't the right fit. And so no shame in that game, but I think what I realized is, you know, there's certain opportunities in your life where the game can change forever. And so once in a while at work, we get invited to an event or a meeting that changes the entire trajectory of your life. And for me, that meeting was this one. I'm going to pause here. This is like a real meeting invite that I screenshot from years ago. I got this meeting invite when my brother was transitioning from the hospital to home to ultimately pass away. And so this was like oh my God, like what am I spending my time on? So if you are in a position of power in your job and have employees, tell them not to ever send a meeting invite like this. And if you are a person that has ever sent this meeting invite or something similar to this, don't ever do it again. Because to me, this is just the epitome of like corporate bureaucracy. And it was just, for me, it was just a very big eye opener. And so this meeting invite led me to do this. And I imagine many of you have searched for something similar. And so after reading 4-Hour Workweek, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, listening to a ton of podcasts about how people were doing side hustles and just trying to figure out the financial independence piece, I was able to discover the financial independence movement. And so for those of you who don't know, there's a term called, it's an acronym, FIRE, financial independence, retire early. And so there's a lot of ways to get to retirement early, but I chose the path of real estate because it offered me cash flow, you know, from rental income. That cash flow was outside of your traditional retirement accounts, which you can't access until you're of retirement age. And I was looking for a solution like today. I remember many times tearfully asking my husband, like, how much is in the checking account? Can I quit my job today? And the answer was no at the time. And so I figured I never want to be in a position where I'm stuck in a job because I have to be. And so so the cash flow is really important. Property appreciation, we know over time in general, if you hold property long enough, it appreciates in value. Leverage as well. So you can use loans, you can get mortgages to buy these appreciating assets where you can't necessarily get a mortgage to buy index funds. And so that helped us to grow and to scale quickly because we were using institutional money and other people's money, and then tax benefits too. And so all of those things sounded really good to me. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be a great way to grow. And I don't have a lot of time to get into the real estate portion of my journey, but I will say it was not a straight line up and to the right. We definitely had our challenges and painful learning lessons, but I mean, that's anything that you do, right? So today my portfolio spans across 5 different states. So I have rental properties in Oklahoma City, just outside of Nashville, Chattanooga, Asheville, just north of Milwaukee, and here in Chicago. And they're a combination of condo buildings, all, you know, to duplexes. I owned, 6 units at one point, but right now it's basically condos, single families, and duplexes. And my cheapest purchase that I ever made was $70,000 for a duplex. And so that's kind of like on the low end. And over time, this has been 5 years in the making. We now have a couple luxury Airbnbs in Asheville, North Carolina. And so it's been quite the journey, but I've really enjoyed the real estate component of our investing journey. So the second lesson that I wanted to learn and share with that I learned and want to share with you is just unlearning the traditional markers of success and my relationship with money. So, like I said before, I wanted a salary. And then I got the salary and I was like, oh, I'm still hungry. This doesn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. And growing up poor, I always had like these ideas about rich people versus me being a poor person. And so I really had to kind of reframe my mind around what wealth is and, who it's accessible to. And, just job titles really don't matter if you're not happy. And so yeah, in terms of being able to get to the position to leave my job, I had to really change my thinking from riding out the clock until I was 65 or 67 and a half, whatever it was going to take to age into retirement, to realizing I have the option to buy my time back. And so the big like aha, like at the time, that phrase, like I was today years old. I was today years old, or I mean, this was 5 years ago, when I realized that the ability to retire is dictated completely by the number that's at the bottom of your balance sheet and not by a date on the calendar. And so I realized, back in the day, I thought the wealthiest person was the one with the biggest paycheck. But what I quickly learned as I, started studying, reading podcasts, reading more books on this topic, so that somebody that makes $500,000 a year, but lives a $600,000 life is worse off than somebody that makes $50,000 a year and lives a $40,000 life. And so that quickly led me to just trying to figure out, okay, what's our financial situation and what do we need to do to figure out like when we've hit that financial freedom number, if it truly is a number at the bottom of the balance sheet. So if it's not a date on the calendar, when do we know we've arrived, right? So in the world, if you're not familiar with the financial independence movement or just financial freedom numbers, essentially, if you don't want to wait until you're 65 years old, you can figure out your financial freedom number, your net worth, your target net worth, by taking your annual spending, multiply that number by 25, and then you calculate your assets, your house, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, minus your liabilities, any debt that you have, your mortgage, car loans, student loans, and whatever that net worth number, once it hits your 25 times your annual expenses, this and if you guys want to look into this on your free time, Google the 4% rule. Essentially what this means is you will be able to safely withdraw 4% of your net worth without ever running out of money, because the stock market, all of your assets will continue to go up, and so once you hit that number, you're done. And so couple examples here. So if you spend, this is not what you make, this is what you spend. If you spend $10,000 a month, you take that number, multiply it by 12 months, multiply that by 25, your net worth, the bottom of your balance sheet, needs to be $3 million. If you live a $6,000 a month life, $72,000 annually, you multiply that by 25, you only need to have $1.8 million. And that means you have to be able to only withdraw 4% a year of that net worth to never run out of money. And so for me, I was thinking, okay, I can hit this from both ends. I can try and make more money to be able to hit the net worth number, but I can also try and accelerate the timeline for my financial freedom by reducing my expenses. And so some of these things that I did I just kept working and doing well at work, but in order to reduce my expenses, we made pretty, what I think were really great choices about like where we wanted to live and how we were going to spend. So we live in a duplex in one of, I think, the best neighborhoods in Chicago. And I really love it here. And I live in a duplex, I live rent free, or I live mortgage free, because our tenants pay our mortgage. And so that was one way to reduce my expenses. And then we also, another example of us reducing our expenses is we drove for many years, we drove a 2010 Corolla. And I begged my husband if we could get a new car. And so we ended up getting a Tesla, with the understanding that we would put it on Turo, which is kind of like an Airbnb for cars. And so every weekend our car is rented out. We kind of treat it as like not our car. It's an asset that we get to have access to during the week. And our Turo guests pay the car payment for us. And so I say that not to like say, oh, we live here and we've drive this. It's more like we're living a very comfortable life, like a more comfortable life than we would expect, because we have our assets have our liabilities, you know, our property that costs us money to hold. We have now turned them into income streams, and we would have not gotten a Tesla if we weren't renting it out. And so you can have some fun with this. It doesn't have to be a rice and beans life. Okay. The other thing that I learned too is, you know, just a stable job is a falsehood. I think, you know, we're seeing now there's so many layoffs. I was laid off in 2008, you know, the last time we were impacted by a recession. And so when that happened, I thought, oh my gosh, like this is not, I was planning on going to grad school anyways, but I was planning to work until I moved to grad school. And so I just thought, I don't want to be in a position where an employer is telling me when it's my time to leave. I want to be able to tell the employer when I'm leaving. And you know, and also given the fact that we're seeing so many layoffs, like I just want to put it out there that I just want to remind you that we are like our self-worth is not tied to our job title and our salary, what our colleagues think of us, right? And even like who we got our diploma from, right? Sorry, Illinois Wesleyan, but my goal was to try and figure out like who am I outside of all of those things, and if those things are not making me happy, like what are the qualities and attributes that I want to be proud of that actually are representative of who I think I am as a person. Okay. Third lesson. And this is a quote that I found that, you know, it just beautifully encompasses what I was trying to say, or what I wanted to share today is as we mature and become wiser, it becomes easier to see what we need to keep and what we need to leave behind. And walking away is the same as moving forward. I would change that last. Walking away can be the same as moving forward, right? So it's up to you to decide what it means to walk away. And so as I was building my real estate portfolio while working full-time, I started in 2016. There were definitely benefits to juggling the side hustle while climbing the corporate ladder. One of the benefits was I was working in very bureaucratic environments, and I don't know if any of you work for bureaucratic organizations, but you know, my soul kind of died every single time I had to go to another steering committee and socialize an idea with somebody new and dealing with the politics. I remember, you know, to get a $300,000 pilot approved, I had to go through 7 steering committee meetings and with really senior level executives. I said, everybody's hourly rate, if we calculate, is it probably equates to $300K worth of discussions that we've had about a silly $300K pilot. And so, so when I was getting bogged down and discouraged with all the bureaucracy in my day job, it was so exciting and so refreshing to be able to buy a house within 10 days and like get that thing renovated and get it up and running and rented to a family in less time than it took to get a pilot approved. And so it was nice to be able to do like the exciting stuff while I still had the stable job. And then, you know, vice versa, right? Like sometimes the real estate stuff was really scary. And I was thinking, you know, things don't always go the way that you want them to do. Like things break, you need to replace air conditioners. And so the time I thought, oh my gosh, thank goodness I have this salary so I can pay for some of these surprise expenses. And so they really played nicely against each other. And I think, you know, the other thing that was really cool was just being able to, I know a lot of my colleagues who also owned real estate were very secretive about it because they were so worried that they were going to be perceived as not dedicated to the job. But what I found is having something outside of my work that was able to give me income gave me the bravery that a lot of people didn't have to speak up. You know, when people, when we had another prep for the pre-meeting, now I was able to say, I'm not doing that. That's a waste of time. And everybody else, my colleagues would say, thank you for saying that. Like I thought we were crazy for having that meeting. And think, you know, when you have something else that you can rely on in case you lose your job, you tend to be braver. And for me, that resulted in a lot more promotions and opportunities to advance on the corporate ladder, which then fueled my investing portfolio too. So they really, they balance each other nicely. And so one thing that I don't want you to take away from this is just quit your job if you don't like it. Like, there are steps that you should take in order to get to the position where you can quit and feel very comfortable about it, and not do it from like a place of like escapism or anxiety. And so after I worked at a health insurance company for many years, and I love that job. I was really well respected and just really well loved and supported. I loved my colleagues. I thought, I'm a little bored here, so let's mix it up, and I'm going to try working at a startup. And again, like, I would have never taken that risk. Startups can be very risky, but I felt comfortable taking that risk because of the real estate portfolio that I had. So again, it's like, what's the highest and best use of your skill set and your passions, and how nice is it to have the luxury to pursue that? I think of so many people that are probably really well suited to do jobs that our world needs, but they don't pay well, right? Like, how many people would be amazing kindergarten teachers, but they're like, I can't live off of that pay. Or amazing social workers or artists, right? The world needs these jobs that are not very well paid. And I just think, imagine if people had a side hustle that could pay for their living expenses, so that we could pursue the work that we were really born to do. But yeah, so for me, it was, let me just try this startup thing. I've never been in this environment before. Long story short, it was very stressful, very chaotic, and not every startup is that way. But I think, when you're building something from scratch, you have to be able to pivot. And sometimes our strategy would flip 180 degrees. And it started taking a physical toll on me. I started taking blood pressure medication. I was grinding my teeth at night to the point where I broke a molar, and pulling 2 all-nighters a week. And so something had to change. And so, I was like, do I stay? Do I go? Like, how far is this company from getting bought or, going to IPO? And I was like, oh, it's such a long time. And my other brother, I was having a conversation with him about, what should I do? And he said, Kory, you've been doing real estate part-time while managing a career for the past 5 years. What do you think you could accomplish if you gave real estate a full-time effort, especially if that's where your passion is? And I was like, you're right. Like, let me just try it. And so I took a sabbatical. I got to the point where there was some political drama at my job, and I was just like, this is not worth it. And I think having the experience with my other brother passing away, you really realize the value of life and time. And so I just said, that's it, I'm done. And I really thank my brother for giving me the confidence to make that choice. And a surprise, a great surprise that happened after that was my company asked me to stay on as a consultant, because there were certain things that were going to be very difficult to backfill. And so I agreed to becoming a consultant under the premise that I'm only going to have one person from the company that I interact with, who is a friend of mine. And I got to name my price, and it was less than 10 hours a month. And so even though I went on sabbatical, I did some part-time consulting, which again, like, helped support me through that transition. And so, yeah, it was, a lot of tears were shed, a lot of hours of sleep were lost, but like, ultimately, going back to that breaking point to breakthrough, I think that was another moment of having a breakthrough that really just opened up my eyes to what was possible. So what does today look like, right? If I'm not spending my time at a W-2 every single day, what do I do with my time? And I think in a nutshell, it's variety, right? So I love being able to bounce from project to project, and like having deep work opportunities, but also a lot of socialization and creative and analytical. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to have that variety in my life. So sometimes I'm assembling furniture. So this was at an Airbnb that we bought last November. We were hanging murals, we were assembling furniture, we were painting, we were unloading dishes, washing them, stocking them, all of that stuff. traveling. This is what our car looks like every time we set up a new property. We're bringing all of our tools, our snacks, our painting supplies, and our dog. She's in there somewhere. But then I also really like, I'm pushing 40, so my back starts to hurt after a little while. I also really like analyzing new investments, and with Airbnbs, there's so much that you can do that's more like digital and technical in nature, like setting up like workflows for guest communication, or understanding dynamic pricing. And so, how do you price your Airbnb similar to how hotels and airlines do it, based on weekend prices and day of the week prices, peak, off peak, all of that stuff. I really enjoy like understanding those technical pieces. And then, I'm also like spending my time like mentoring others. So this is like, some of the dynamic pricing that I'm doing. These are all my properties and like vacancy rates and stuff like that. So a lot of fun, very nerdy. I also, I am mentoring others too. And that has been such a source of joy for me, because that like feeling of being back against the wall and something's got to change, and everybody has a different reason for why they feel that way. Sometimes it's the mom that just had a baby and she's like, I want to stay home with my kid, and like it's not possible. Or my husband works a really physically demanding job and I want him to have his body not break on us. Everybody has a reason for wanting to get out of the rat race. And it's been really fun to help people kind of explore what are your options. Within real estate specifically, there's so many different things you can do. You can flip properties, you can just own long-term rentals, you can do Airbnb. And so helping people kind of crystallize their own strategy that feels right to them has been such a fun experience. And then the other cool thing that has come out of it too is the opportunity to partner with people on real estate investments. So when I was working, my husband and I just invested in properties ourselves, and we had offers to partner. People said, if you ever want to partner, if you ever need some cash, like let me know. And I just said, I can't do that. I can't take somebody's money. I can't add the stress of being responsible for somebody else's nest egg while I'm juggling a full-time job and my own real estate portfolio. And once I left my job, I had the confidence to say, okay, I believe in my ability to be a custodian of somebody's, either retirement fund or like the generational wealth that they want to pass on to their children. And to do it together as a fun experience, right? So many people are so afraid to invest in real estate by themselves. And so to be able to work alongside somebody, kind of show them the ropes, but also, in the instance of partnering on like Airbnbs, a lot of people that I've spoken with have second homes or want a second home. They're like, oh, if I could just Airbnb it enough to like cover the cost, that'd be amazing. And I say like, well, what if it could be an income stream for you? Like, what if it could net you $3,000, $5,000 a month on one property? And I was in the same boat too, where I just couldn't even comprehend it. And so that has been a really fun opportunity just to date potential partners and figure out if it makes sense for us to buy a really awesome property together. And so, and then I've also done co-hosting and like designing other people's Airbnbs too. So I've learned through this past year and a half that I've enjoyed designing and picking out furniture and imagining what a guest experience would be like in a really cool area. And a lot of my friends have said, oh, I would love an Airbnb. I'm busy. I don't want to manage it. And so I've helped them design, install the furniture, and handle all of the guest communications and do all of this dynamic pricing that we're talking about. So that's been kind of fun to be able to share that gift with people that I care about. And then the other piece, besides just this is the work that I do, we do a lot of travel. And so because we are location independent now, we've been able to really pursue our passion of skiing. So my husband, we spent 4 months in Salt Lake City this past winter. And, my husband and I were like, we have a pass. We had the Epic Pass for those of you skiers. And so we can ski at Park City, but it'd be so cool if we could ski at other places. And so he got a very, very part-time role at a ski resort as a ski instructor assistant so that we could get free passes there. And then he got certified to be an instructor along the way. And so, you know, it's not his next career move, but it's just like something fun that he wanted to be able to do. And while we were out there, we were able to invite our friends to come out for a weekend or President's, you know, spring break or whatever, and teach all of their little kiddos how to ski. We don't ski that much in the Midwest, right? And so to be able to bring these kids out, and for some, like really open their eyes to something that they really love to do, that they would have not gotten exposure to at this point in their life, has been just awesome. And then on the bottom right, you know, this is us and our moms. They both turned 70 this year. And so we were able to cash in all of our travel points that we've accumulated from all of these credit cards and all of our travels, and take them to Europe for a month. And, you know, they always say, like, after you leave the nest, you don't really spend significant amounts of time with your parents anymore. I mean, it's dinner or holiday weekend, maybe some small vacations. And so while they're still physically capable of climbing Acropolis, we wanted to take them there and really just celebrate them and spend that quality time together. And sometimes when you do extended travel, it ends up being a lot more affordable than you know, just doing a weekend here or there. So so we've really enjoyed being able to travel, and hopefully in the future we'll have even more extended travel in our future. So you know, my parting words to you are, and I hope you don't have to have somebody that you love pass away for you to realize this. So we have one life, and we have our own physical capabilities, and, you know, and our body might not be able to be as functional as we want it to be for the rest of our life. And so while we can still enjoy life, and while our loved ones are around, like, let's figure out what it's going to take to build a life of your dreams. And before all of you joined, you know, Kaylee and I were talking about vacations, and you know, how it's nice to be able to take a 2-week vacation. And I said, but the goal is to create a life that you don't need to take a vacation from. And I feel blessed that we've been able to get to that point. I mean, I have not replaced my salary at my last job by any means, but I haven't broken any more teeth, and I've really focused on, you know, my physical health. I've started going to therapy, and, you know, just being able to invest in being the best version of myself as possible for myself, but also for the people that I love. And so so I encourage you to figure out what it is. And I'm not pushing everybody to do real estate, but there's a lot of avenues to financial freedom. And I'd encourage you to just explore and see if anything sticks, if this talk has resonated with you. So with that, I guess I'll just open it up for questions. And I've got my contact information if anybody would like to reach out.
Thanks, Kory. We do have a number of questions that have come in, and I'll try and go through as many kind of as we have time for. So kind of the first one here is, for someone starting out, are there any particular states or property types that someone should look into investing in?
Yeah, of course there are. I think a lot of it has to do with your own personal goals and your capacity, though, right? So I will share a little bit about our real estate getting started, where we started and where we're at. When we got started, we didn't have a ton of cash to invest. And so we said, let's just go somewhere where it's like the cheapest property that we can get. So that, you know, I thought, oh my gosh, we have to amass as many units as possible. So I think we had gotten up to like 29 units that we had owned across a lot of Midwestern affordable states to purchase. And what we realized is when we ran the numbers, you know, so there's all these like real estate investing property calculators, and we got really excited about the potential cash flow of these cheap properties that could rent for more. But what we discovered is lower rent properties sometimes can attract, you know, unreliable tenants, right? So a lot of our tenants were struggling to pay their bills. And, you know, it was a situation where a lot of our tenants, if their car broke down, they would pay to fix their car before they would pay their rent, because that car is what got them to work so they could make more money to pay their rent and to feed their children. And so it was really difficult because I felt like we were very invested in the financial health of our tenants. And so we bought a bunch of cheap units, and, you know, one month we'd make $2,000, another month we'd lose 5,000. It was so up and down. And so I would say low cost of living states are great. And there are systems and processes and so much information out there for how to manage out of state and how to find property managers that can help you from afar. But don't get like really excited about just super cheap properties that are gonna, you know, rent for 4 times more, because that's not the reality. And so I would say higher quality properties where people have pride of rentership. They love their home, they want to stay, I think is what I would suggest, unless you want to go straight to Airbnbs, and that's a completely different discussion. So really just matters about what's your goals and what's your capacity.
To that same token, would you recommend vacation rentals over a more traditional rental?
I'm gonna try not to answer every single question with "it depends," but I will share my personal experience because I have both. So we have since stabilized our portfolio. So we have reduced the number of long-term rentals that we have, and just kind of pruned the bad ones and kept the good ones. So our good long-term rentals bring in, you know, about $500 or $600 a month in profit. And so we've got, you know, a handful of those. And then and that's after the mortgage is paid. And then we have two short-term rentals in Asheville. One's in the city of Asheville, one is in a small mountain town outside of it. And those, I mean, they break even on a bad month. On a good month, they'll net like $12,000. So it's a huge difference, but the short-term rentals are really, you're getting into a hospitality business, right? It's not just properties. And so I love guest communication. I love design. And so for me, I was like, you know, I've got the time, let me figure this out. And I set myself up to be able to scale. So I invested in technology that could help me like automate messages when a lot of people don't do that kind of stuff. And so if you are the kind of person that gets a lot of joy from the idea of being kind of in the hospitality industry, it's not a bad way to go. And you also get to like stay in the property too. Like we don't stay in our Section 8 homes in Oklahoma City ever, right? Like people live there. But like next week I'm going to Asheville, and I'm bringing some of my high school girlfriends to come for a week with me. And so to be able to like use your property as well and share it with the ones that you love has been really gratifying. But it can be stressful at times, you know, like we've had the heat go out in one of our new construction properties. It was like a faulty valve. And so you've got to quickly problem solve. And so everything that you want to do in real estate can be outsourced. If you outsource everything, you won't make any money. And so you have to have some sort of driver or like excitement about owning at least one or two components of an investment. But I love both. I like the diversity of having both. Kind of like the stable corporate job and like the risky real estate. Now it's like the stable long-term rentals versus the risky Airbnbs. So
we're getting a lot of real estate questions here, kind of in follow-up. So I'm going to keep on that, just kind of that train here. Can you tell us more about how you manage properties living in a different state?
Yeah, of course. I sometimes think it's easier to manage out of state than it is in state. And you would think it would be opposite because, you know, for local projects, like in our duplex, when something breaks downstairs, we have to go downstairs and we've got to tinker and figure out what's wrong. People always say, oh, I don't want to do real estate because I don't want to get a call at 2 a.m. that the toilet's not working. We have never had that call. I also don't know of many tenants that are going to call at 2 a.m. about a toilet. They'll probably wait until the morning. But I have found, and this is like, again, where my corporate experience has been super beneficial in my real estate journey, because I've had management positions, and, you know, learning how to develop teams and like learning how to leverage the talent and skill of others has translated well. So for the property managers that we use for our long-term rentals, we don't really check in with them that much. It's like we just collect a check for the most part. They'll let us know if a heater goes out or something and we need to approve a new expense. But that money, you know, once you find really good property managers, we've kissed some frogs, but when you find really good property managers, it's a little set and forget it until, you know, lease needs to get renewed, and oh, do we want to renovate this unit before we lease it up? For short-term rentals and my medium-term rentals, the ones where it's, you know, people that are staying in a furnished place for more than 30 days, I think your cleaner and your handyman are everything. And I believe I treat them really well. And I also empower them to use their own critical thinking skills to solve a problem. So when we were in Italy, we had a water main leak, and water was pouring into the basement of the house. We had to cancel an Airbnb stay for the weekend. And I told my handyman, who I've done multiple projects with at this point, I trust you, like, do what it takes to fix it. He brought his jackhammer. He, you know, jackhammered into the front yard, found the leak, filled it up with gravel. He brought 6 of his buddies to come and fix it. And had I been, and there, when I was in Italy, I was like, oh, I wish I was in North Carolina, because I would just dig and find that leak myself. But, you know, to be able to just like work with him and get those communication updates every couple of hours. And, you know, that problem was not as bad. It wasn't as damaging as I thought. So I live in a high cost of living area. Chicago can be expensive. This repair cost me, my friend actually had a very similar issue at her house here in the Chicago suburbs. It cost her $15,000. In North Carolina, it was $2,500 to fix. And so there are some benefits of if you live in a high cost of living area, there are some, you know, perks to being able to invest in low cost of living areas where the property taxes are less, the labor is less. And so it's been really great. But yeah, I invest in those relationships. You know, I'm asking how, you know, their daughter is doing, and they have a granddaughter who has cancer. And so, you know, I'm asking, like, how's she doing? How are her treatments going? You can't just be a long distance absent landlord that calls just to get something done. You really, especially in the South, I've learned you have to invest in those relationships and do the small talk and really just get to know them as people.
Kory, before you dove into the world of real estate, were there any other industries that you seriously considered?
Not so much. You know, I went to grad school, and when I was looking and shopping around for different MBA programs, I was very focused on entering the healthcare industry. I was actually hoping to be pre-med. When I was a senior in high school, I thought, oh, I want to be a doctor. And then, you know, I realized, like, if you get D's in biology, you probably can't be a doctor. So I worked in an insurance agency that did more like property and casualty insurance. And then when I was looking for healthcare jobs, my brother was going through just the healthcare system is not always the best here in the US, right? Like, we know that. And I just remember sitting there as the sister of a patient thinking, like, this has to be better. There were times when they would say, oh, we're going to discharge you as soon as your lab results come back. And it would be 12 hours before somebody got back to him, and he wasn't allowed to eat until he was discharged, right? And so just seeing all of the inefficiency, I was like, I want to go into healthcare. We've got to fix this. I need to play some sort of role in improving this. And so I had a strong passion for healthcare. And I think the more that I sat in like a bureaucratic environment, and even in the startup environment, I realized, like, it's broken. And I don't know how much, and this is like something that I've like wrestled with, like, what kind of difference can I make? What kind of difference have I made? Right. And so that's why I also kind of realized for me, like, oh, let me just work on my health and be a good person and, you know, pursue my passion. I think that's the best anybody can do for this world, is to like find out what your passion is and figure out what makes you feel alive and do that. So yeah, so for me, it was like healthcare or bust until I found real estate. And then I was like, it seems like more of a fit.
Have you ever considered getting a real estate license, if you don't already, And would you recommend that?
I have considered it. I actually took all of the courses to get licensed in Utah, thinking that we were going to go back out there this winter. And then my husband said, I think I'm kind of skied out. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? So, because my thought was, we want to buy something out there, so at least I can save on the commission. And I have thought about getting my license here in Illinois, not to be a full-time agent. I was telling a friend, I don't want to identify as an agent. I want to identify as an investor first. But I have been surprised at how many people assumed I was an agent and have said, hey, we're about to, we want to sell our house. Can you list it for us? And I'm like, I wish I could, but I don't have my license. And so, yeah, a license probably is in my future. But I think it probably makes even more sense to do it sooner than I have. I've been investing for 5 years. If you plan on investing in your own market, where you can actually represent yourself. Like, I'm not going to go out and get licensed in every single state that I own properties in, or every state that I want to own properties in. It's just not a good use of my time. But if you're interested in investing, and think that you could use your license to save on your own commissions, then I would say it's a great idea.
Great. Have you ever considered passive investments in commercial real estate? And it looks like an interesting option for those of us who don't have the time to actively manage real estate.
Yeah, I've evaluated quite a few syndications. I haven't found one that I love. So for those of you that are not familiar with syndications, that's when you somebody else is kind of like running a deal and finding like a bigger opportunity to purchase. And so this might be like a 300 unit apartment building in Dallas, or this might be multiple buildings, like a package deal across multiple states. And so typically it's like, just, pitch in $50,000 minimum or $75,000 minimum or $100,000, whatever it looks like, to pool our money together to buy a bigger building. And those syndications have people that are like actually operating and managing that syndication full time, so that you literally just send a check and then you collect quarterly checks. I am very interested in that, both running a syndication in my future, possibly, or investing passively in one. I haven't found one where like I've been super excited about the numbers. And so for those of you that are interested in syndications, dig into the numbers really well, because a lot of times there can be like admin fees on top of it where it's like, I don't know if this is going to make sense for me, or the assumptions are really conflated, right? So you want to make sure that they're underwriting really conservatively and not being super optimistic, especially in today's interest rate market. So, or, the interest rate environment. So, I've even looked at, one of my friends is, she's doing a syndication for like a marijuana grow facility. And so there's a lot of interesting syndications out there. But yeah, I haven't found one that I'm like, feeling super confident about yet. But if you're busy, it's a great option if you can find the right one.
I have 2 more questions, if you don't mind here, and then I think we are going to get close to time, so we'll maybe answer those 2 and end there. So first one being, what other industries are popular with the FIRE movement besides real estate? And if you could talk a little bit more just maybe about that FIRE movement in general, that would be great.
Yeah. So there are so many podcasts and people are doing all kinds of stuff. So like, I think like the Amazon dropship FBA stuff, I'm not super familiar with it, but people are opening up like, Amazon stores. I have a friend who's doing that, and she was doing really well when she first started. She said it's just so competitive, but so that's one thing that people do. Other people have just been kind of like doing, like they reduce their expenses a lot, and then they do a little bit of Uber, they do a little bit of Instacart just to cover like the fun money, right? Trying to think of other stuff that people have done. Influencing. Some people have, found like a niche that they're really interested in, whether it's like travel or whether it's, opening things on YouTube. And I think if you can find like a niche that people are interested in, you can make a lot on it takes a while to build that business, but it's definitely a possibility. So those are some of the things that found, yeah, like the marijuana grow facilities, like some people are doing syndications full time. So lots of different options. And I think it's just a matter of like what resonates with you, both from an interest level and a skill set issue level.
Alrighty. And then last question here. As a business owner, do you ever struggle with needing to always be available or always be on?
Mm, yeah, I think it's not even as a business owner, it's a personality issue. I think I was always on at work too. I remember there was one consulting project. Somebody asked, one of my friends, we were, around a campfire, they're asking like, what's the most ridiculous request that you've ever gotten from a boss? And mine was, we were trying to land a new client when I was a consultant and working on a deck. And so we like did a relay team sprint to work on this presentation. And me and my partner worked from after dinner until 2 a.m. and we passed the baton. The deck was so our teammate was going to wake up at 2 a.m. and work on it from 2 a.m. until 7 a.m. And like at the time I thought that was perfectly normal because I was traveling for work. And so in my mind, I was thinking, well, when I'm traveling, like they have all of my time. And when I'm home, they're going to leave me alone. And that wasn't the case either. And so I think it's something that I'm working on personally. It's just like establishing boundaries and creating a little bit more structure in my own schedule. But also I think doing for the short-term rentals, for instance, automating a lot of the messages. I have quick replies for, oh, how far is your property from the airport? Like that's not an urgent question. That's a question that I get answered very frequently. So I just have an auto reply already scheduled so I can just click it and hit send. And so the more that you systematize and even prepping for this trip to Europe where I was going to be really away in different time zones, I did so much prep in advance of that trip and even talking to my team like, oh, can I put your phone number down in case my guests need immediate assistance? And they're like, yeah, sure, it's fine. But that has yielded so many dividends for after the trip that it's got me thinking maybe I need to plan an extended trip every single year so that I can figure out what are the cracks in my business so that I can automate, systematize, and just make it easier. And so I've noticed after I've come back from my trip, I have a lot less communication from my guests as well as my crew because of some of the stuff that I had done in advance of this vacation.
Well, Kory, I want to thank you so much for sharing so many tips and lessons and ideas with all of us. I know that you're particularly busy, particularly coming back from that trip, right? And so I just want to thank you again for taking time out of your day to talk with us. And thank you all for attending and asking such great questions. For those who are interested, or maybe you need to listen to this again or have other questions, Kory did include her email there on that last slide, which will again be included in the recording. And that recording is going to go straight to your email inboxes tomorrow afternoon. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you in November for our next Titan Talk, which will be a part of our innovation series. And in the meantime, see you next time.
Thank you.